Okay, good to go.
Welcome everyone. My name is Lori, and we are here at the Prairie Renaissance Cultural Alliance in Morris, Minnesota, with Malena Handeen, who is an artist from Milan, Minnesota. We are very excited to have her here to talk a little bit about her work. So without further ado, welcome Malena.
Thanks so much. Great. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, it is I, the painter, and it is really it's fun to be asked back to PRCA. I have shown here, I guess, twice before, and for this show, I just will mention that, like, the reason for the title of the show being a selection of paintings, quite, I mean, unartfully named, is because I sort of felt like it was a little bit of a show of leftovers, because I had, sold new work, and this was sort of like the permanent collection and the very most recent things. So it's quite a range. And as somebody mentioned to me, like, oh, you've got a lot of different styles and you go in a lot of different directions, and it's because this sampling is from many different eras of my work. So I will address that as we kind of like go through, because the dates aren't on these, but I'll try to give some indication of where we are chronologically in my catalog of images. But I do want to just talk a little bit about why I have come to be an art maker and an image maker. And I would just sort of say that part of it is that it was just never crushed out of me. It was never squashed in me, and it was just sort of allowed to flourish, and I was given nurturing in these things where I think I mean, I have experienced a little bit of what probably most people do experience, maybe more strongly, of just like people saying, oh, you don't want to be an artist, so that's not gonna be you're not gonna make your living doing that. And I recognize there were some people who probably like had that kind of attitude toward art making, but I just thought, they don't know how to have any fun, and that's their problem. And yeah, I mean, so much of what art making is for me is I'm entertaining myself. I'm still just learning about the process, and so it's still exciting to me because I'm still learning how to do it. And so when I, each piece is sort of like my favorite piece at the time, because I'm learning that thing right now. And so that's, it has kept me engaged in that way. And I think I also was just never made to feel like any particular piece was so precious that, like the next one could be better. Why not? So I don't, I mean, as I talked quite a bit for a while, I don't know if Farrell, but Dan, I remember arguing extensively with Dan about, he was, he said, where's your old work? And I was like, oh, I paint over it. I don't keep it, I paint over it. And he was like, what are you doing? You just need to get it out of your studio and in front of other people's eyeballs. If your eyeballs are sick of it, get it in front of other people's eyeballs.
From a man who never showed anybody.
That's why he's an expert. But but I do think about that conversation all the time, and it did make me, I mean, especially after the fire, and I did lose, work, and I thought, okay, like, when, when I would have the sort of impulse to sand a old painting and paint over it, I would try to like harken back to like, why did he tell me it's just me. I'm tired of this painting, but maybe somebody else will look at it and maybe somebody else will be moved by it. I'm just over it right now. And so this is a group of surviving paintings that I have not painted over, although some of them are very old. And so like, I want to just talk a little bit about a couple of these pieces, and please, like, throughout this, if you have a question about something, like, start now, don't wait till later, because I'm ready to engage with like what you're thinking about what I'm saying. This is the oldest painting in here, because that's the thing that I did in a college class. It was like part of a still life, and there was a skull in the still life, and it's like an upside down, it's a skull that's laid on its top of its head. And this is like some of the interior bones of it. And probably the only reason why it has survived is because for a long time that was in my grandma's studio in Pennsylvania. And so it came back to me after she passed away, and I was like, yeah, that's actually fine. That's actually pretty amazing. And I love that. Thank you for hanging the show the way that you have. I'm like seeing it differently because I'm like, oh yeah, these relate. Oh yeah, these are good. And I mean, the fact that these two are next to each other helps me to illustrate the fact that I have, so I mean, like, I would never have said Georgia O'Keeffe is an influence of my work, but then you see these things next to each other, and it's like, oh well, maybe, because this, which is a painting that I did last fall, and is from driving very close to the ghost ranch. I mean, the ghost ranch where Jojo O'Keeffe was painting is actually like around this corner between these in that little valley in there. So,
Did you paint or?
Yeah. I had actually like video from my phone driving on the highway, and so I painted from various, like, there probably isn't one point that looks exactly like that because it's a little bit of a compilation of moving pictures. But the O'Keeffe stuff that I saw in Chicago when I was 13, what I thought impressed me the most, seeing that, I remember thinking, oh, these cloud paintings, and there were, these like enormous, 20-foot long, kind of abstract cloud paintings, and but the color was really accurate. So it's like, oh, this is like this very idealized form, but the palette is very real, and I wouldn't have thought like, oh, that influenced the way that I paint, because at that time, at that age, I was painting more like Laurel Birch, the cat people in the gold and the sort of like Egyptian cartoons, for print on handbags and towels and things, and I was kind of painting like that at that age. But one of the things that's had the most staying power in my work is painting clouds and storms and inclement weather and poor sailing conditions, as you
Because you're from Minnesota.
Well, yeah, I am. Yeah. I am from Minnesota. Yeah, so, you know, I've just been so privileged. I feel like art making is a thing that, although like I feel like it sustains me, I feel like it's essential to me, but then like, okay, let's look at society. It's actually like a luxury. I will admit this. And there are ways in which art making can kind of soothe the thing that might otherwise, because a lot of the things I have the impetus to make art because before I have rage in me, and because of my disappointment in the state of, some other aspect of the world, I'm over here making art. But like, what would I do if I wasn't doing that? Maybe I would do something that would make more of a difference in some kind of way, but this is what I do. And I know that that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily translate. It doesn't necessarily have the impact that like, maybe I should be out protesting in front of the courthouse or something. But this is what I do with it. This is what I've always, been motivated to do with the strong feelings that I have. A lot, of passion has driven me to just go stretch canvas, and these are the things that I do that they make me soothed. They make me a kinder, gentler person. When I am in the act of stretching the canvas and prepping the canvas and like observing the thing and like the translation of the image that I'm seeing goes out my hand, I am like in a very peaceful, like I feel that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I know I'm jumping all over the place, but like in my artist statement, one of the things that was trying to talk about was that we often wonder like what are we supposed to be doing? How is my life relevant? What's my purpose? And while this still remains in flux, I mean, I know how I feel when I'm making this stuff, that it makes me feel like, oh yeah, that's right, this is what I'm meant to do. Like I'm my best self in the state of creating something, in part because I come back to there are familiar things about going through the motions of being in this practice that I've been in for a long, for many years. And in part because there are always new, each piece presents a new set of limitations and a new set of, whatever it was that inspired, whatever that pretty thing was that I'm trying to capture. It's, it's all in service to that pretty thing in this moment. And the success of any of these paintings is just, was I able to make every mark in service of that particular relationship that I thought was pretty in the first place, that inspired me to make the thing. And so sometimes it's just a relationship of color or a attention in the composition. And it's easy to, maybe it's the second or third day that I'm working on a painting and I've sort of started to get interested in something else, but no. Go back and say, remember, why did I start this painting? Just do that painting. Just be disciplined for once in your life and just do the painting that you set out to do. And it's always a more successful painting if I just you know, it's like if I'm just trying to be concise about saying that thing rather than trying to say every beautiful thought that is coming into my mind as I'm trying to render something, but just the one thing. So like, I want to talk about a painting that, this is the most recent painting that I have done. And I brought it in with me today. It was not hung with the show because it was on the easel. And there are two paintings on the wall here that it is like in a, it was this painting first and then that painting and then this. And I was recently in Italy with my mom and her sister and a cousin, and in our traveling around, one of the main objectives that I had on this trip was just to tap into recording the places that we were going in gouache on campus. Never done that before. Who would do that? It's not a great idea, but it's what I have. And it's like the things that were exciting to me about those materials that I was traveling with was that they would dry quickly and be able to travel well. And also just that the gouache is like a really rich, it's a highly pigmented medium. And like that painting I did on site. Truly, that the second one was like a sketch, and I kind of did a little bit of color study and then finished it later, but it is actually quite unfinished in some areas, but it's finished enough that you look at it and you go, oh, that's great. That's fine. That's enough. That's enough. And then this one is like entirely from a sketch and then photos. It was like there was like a very light sketch, and then I worked from a couple of photographs to finish this image. The image itself, just today, I was having a conversation with a woman who said, why should you include this dark figure? Everything else about the image is so positive, and I was like, oh, it's about that. It's about figure. It's like, and I will admit to you now that in the photograph that I took, it's actually like, it was my cousin Angela walking away. She's a tall 35-year-old woman, not a little granny, but I had observed this little granny walking around town numerous other times, and it was her that I wanted to paint. So I just, was like, okay, this is going to be a good setting for the man. I created a little habitat for the man. And so it was like, to me, all about making the contrast in the environment for the little granny to be hobbling along in with her little plastic bag. And so at some point, please, all of you come up and observe her little green plastic bag. It's very important. And it, to me, was like the most, it was the sweetest part. And but the woman who was giving me this, like, this question, she saw it as like, in the narrative in her mind, this was not an art, this was a medical professional, actually. And she was concerned about like the health of this person, and this maybe looked like, this is maybe dangerous or something. But in that, like, the reason that I was so taken with this particular subject matter is because in this town, people live to be 110 years old, and she's only 88, and she's gonna go get on her bike later, and she's just having a day, she's going to the market, she's schlepping her little bag, and And the calves on this moment were just so healthy. And that she was dressed all in black, like, I mean, that was like just typical of the town. If somebody lost their husband, they're dressed all in black for the rest of their life. Like, it's not. It actually looked quite good. It's like, so what she brought up to me though that I thought was sort of well articulated was that it's just an image that lends itself to having multiple narratives. And that it's like, if this was a panel in a comic strip, what happened before or after this, it could go a lot of different ways. But it still is, I mean, it's like, it's still about her. So yeah, I was really pleased with the limitations of these materials still being able to like give some drama. But it's like, it was just not something that I necessarily would have done on purpose. In honesty, I thought that they were acrylics when I put them in the bag. And then when they turned out to be gouache, I was like, well, because I don't really know a good way to stabilize that, but so they might not be around forever. But that's my most recent work. And so what else? What can I tell you?
Can you talk about the children in the corner?
Yeah. That painting is so most of my work is oil. Most of these paintings are oil on canvas with a acrylic tinted underpainting, or the gesso is just some kind of mid-value warm hue typically. And so this painting of my kids was just started as a study of just to make myself do portraiture in the style of a class that my grandmother Mary Jane had recently taken a portrait painting class. I didn't take the class, but she said to me, "Oh, this guy, he started his portrait style was just black and red." And so I thought, I could do that. And so there's a different painting underneath this painting. And I sanded it down. It was durable. This is a linen. Surface underneath. And I had sanded it and re-primed it and just used it for a study. And so it's from a picture of my kids, Hazel and Arlo, when they were 3 and 7. That's Hazel and Arlo when they were little. Did you know that? Did you recognize them? Did you know it, Malcolm? Kind of?
I recognize them
The
from
cheek?
a different painting at the top.
Yes, it's kind of similar. Yeah.
I know.
And the cheeks are real. They really had cheeks like that. But of course the background was like not like that on this, I had a photo of them outside when it was just kind of a gray day. So it was like a really good photograph for the resolution of the figure, but then the background was just blah, so I made it apocalyptical. So yeah, that's in the permanent collection because that's it's like yeah.
Now, what about the one with the streaming light?
No, thank you for asking. I want to talk about this painting. I mean, like I just have to say again to gallery, thank you, because I love to talk about art and I don't get enough opportunity to do it. This painting is so I've done a lot of paintings of the crew working in the field. I used to grow organic vegetables for 24 years, and it was like a subject that I painted over and over again. Perhaps some of you have paintings in your homes of people working in vegetable fields that I have done in the past. It's something that I've painted numerous times. And I had started this one, and then I this is the embodiment of heat stroke, and this is the end of the day. And also it's like, this is the end of the day in the last season that we farmed. And I would say tension was at an all-time high. And I don't know if you've like done manual labor until words don't make sense and everybody is like speaking a different language because everybody's gone field crazy from exertion and dehydration, and they're kind of just like but I mean, or maybe have heat stroke doing something normal, but it kind of feels like this. And so this is like, some of these marks are just violent on top of an otherwise lovely pastoral, you know, I mean, if you get your spectacles out and actually look at it, it's like, let's see, I believe it's Jacob's driving the tractor. Maeve, that's probably you. It's like, oh, Lily, that's Lily, and that might be Sturmer or Harrison. I mean, I can look at these figures and go, oh yeah, because that would be Elliot in the background. We had 100 some people work for us over the years, and I did paintings of many of them. And this one is like more refined, and like I don't have heat stroke while painting this painting. And it's done from a photograph, which you can tell by how like the light hasn't changed all day long. I mean, some paintings that they're done from life, and I'm like out there. For instance, the cow painting, that's a painting where I was out in the pasture. I was literally sitting in the pasture, and the light is changing throughout the day, and the cattle are moving, and it's a hasty painting. That painting was probably done in an hour, and this painting was probably done in 6 to 10 hours. And it's Arlo and Katie Pickford, who only worked for us for 2 weeks or something, who are swinging hose at each other. I mean, like, that happened, but I have a picture of it. And then Maeve, serene, Maeve calmly, bravely hoeing the cabbage, and then Harrison and Sturmer and Conover rubbing on the ground back there. Yeah. So yeah, and I mean that has a date, June 14th, 2018. But it wasn't painted until last summer. Yeah, so this is what it feels like to actually be farming. And this is what it looks like in the poster. Maybe. Yeah. And I don't really have a good example of a meat frog, but I did a series of really hastily made, perhaps I will say, sort of violently rendered paintings of cute kitty heads on fire crashing into various things, buildings, the earth, the house, whatever. And there's also other things, there's like winged frogs and stuff. And the reason I was calling them meat frogs was as though they were frogs that were raised for meat. Again, I know that doesn't make sense, but there was a notebook. There was a notebook that I found with field notes about like a farm meeting and things that we needed to take care of. And one of the things, this was actually from early Easy Bean days, and it said, it was like bullets. And it was like, we need to dig more ponds for frogs. And I was like, wow, that was written by people who have been in town too long. Because it was about bug control. They wanted to grow more frogs to deal with the mosquitoes. I was like, they're about to dig more ponds to raise more frogs. And I told myself, no, they're smarter than that. They were raising the frogs for meat. And so the meat frog concept was born in my mind. And so the meat frog to me was sort of like any little cute thing that was just made for, okay, if not meat, sustenance, maybe $30 worth. And so if I made a bunch of tiny paintings that I could sell and I could part with, and I wouldn't feel a lot of personal attachment, they're meat frogs. They're just meat frogs. You with me? Yes, okay.
Perfect.
And I have they're sit on top of my, like, they're the sort of thing that I would have at a merch booth. I'm also a musician. And sometimes when I play music, I'm selling the t-shirts and the things. And I will have little paintings also for sale. I have some meat frogs on hand. I didn't bring any meat frogs to this show because I thought you wouldn't take me seriously. They're quite fun to make. You feel me? So this is almost close to that, like this is almost close. Because some of the meat frogs were created on top of another painting. A painting that I was just like, what was I thinking? I forgot. And now it's a meat frog. This is like something between, this is a hybrid between pastoral landscape and a meat frog. And then this is actually also, this was a meat frog and then it got refined. It was another painting and then it was sacrificed and then it was brought back from Crazy Town with a self-portrait on top of it. Because there are several methods of making a successful painting. This is sort of like an early, it's got meat frog vibes, but I hadn't thought about the meat frog at that time. This is from 2013. And at this point, I was just like, I had also just recently done the painting that is in the Unitarian Church in Wilmer. Well, that's two of myself and one is comforting the other one. And it has lots of little figures, little cartoon shaped kitty heads. But it's like very realistic in the middle, and then it's got all this other fantastic stuff going on around it. And that is done around the same time. This is 2013. So this is after the fire. And I can tell. It's so like me. That would be so like me to do. So I had a fire in 2012. And it definitely, it changed some of the way that I was making art. For one thing, I had no studio, so I was making art in a screen tent in my yard. And the Ship on a Fire painting was the first painting that I did after the fire. I used a lot of orange. I was like, oh, orange, everything. And the whole background was orange. And then I sort of carved out this painting, leaving the fire to show through. And as perhaps some of you may know, I have done a series of 6, 7 other renditions of ships on fire on a giant wave where everything is clearly about to go to pieces, and it's worse before it gets better. And that is acrylic. I think that's the only acrylic, because again, it was like I was painting in a screen tent. I had not yet replenished my preferred supplies. So, and I have had many an offer on that painting, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it because of what it meant to me, because of what I've been through. So instead of, and I did make some prints of it at one time, but what I felt even better about was just painting it over and over and over, because how it felt to paint it was that all of my, this image is so I'm gonna let's just weird to be talking about somebody like behind their back. So it was like all the anxiety that I could muster in one image at the time. I've now thought of even worse things, but to get into this painting and to be like studying it in order to render this image, all my anxiety would just be like concentrated and funneled into this thing. And then when I would step away from it, it would be, I describe it as like when you've been standing pressing your arms in the doorway and then you step out of the doorway and you feel like your arms are floating. That's what it feels like. I'd be like, at least I'm not those suckers. I just felt like, to me, it was just therapeutic for me to just put it in there and like think about something really stressful. And then just be like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna just leave that. I'm gonna leave that in the shop. And it worked. It worked so well for me. I did it over and over again. And I would say there's other images that have that kind of service to me, to the storm pictures, and to some extent, like the meat frog, like painting. It's more like the mark making itself takes some of that angst out of me into it, but this is like the more representational stuff that like anybody looks at it and just goes like I mean
We can all relate.
yeah, and I would say more and more I have gotten like every time I've painted a new rendition of the painting, some of them are very more refined than this. This is so loosely, so gesturally made. If you look at it up close, I mean, it's just scrubbed on here. It's not like a very carefully laid out, it was hastily done, and it's like, wow, I'm kind of lucky that came out like something. But some of the ones that I've done since then are like more realistic in some ways, but people, I mean, I get people every year who stand in front of the ship on fire and are like, that's my life right now. I just go.
I think we have time for maybe one last question for Malena. We'll stick around and continue talking after this. Anyone want the last question? Yeah.
One of my favorite things that I just thought because of and always wanted to see in real life that you did was the queen bee on the side of the barn and the skunks that floated away in the apocalypse. I just want your reflections in the aftermath. Photos of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, wow. I mean, we put so much effort into creating that organic valley, paid for it. There were 3 artists involved in doing it. We're all old friends. We were like plotting to put this proposal together to do this super awesome mural on an old tobacco barn. Anybody else see it? You know what I'm talking about? And it was really, really fun to do. And then and then Wisconsin got an 18-inch rain and a you know, a dam broke and a lake washed out into the valley and flooded. I mean, this barn was the least of worries in the area. I mean, there was like senior nursing homes that were flooded and people were evacuating people. It happened in the middle of the night. On the site where the barn was, like tractors washed away. I mean, it was powerful. And so I remember talking to my friend Aaron, who was one of the collaborators on that project, and he said, yeah, that's crazy, but there are only temporal arts. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. You know, Rome is still falling, but it's like, it's a kind of a good reminder that like, oh yeah, that it's like everything, enjoy it while you can. And I did, like, gosh, did I have any less fun doing the thing that's gone now? I mean, okay, it's too bad I can't say, yeah, go and check it out. I do have pictures of it. We can check out pictures of it. But and I do feel bad for, you know, the people whose property it was in the Atlantic Valley who had, you know, big plans to like create like an attraction. And it was gorgeous. And then it was
How long did it stand before?
like a year. I think it was like 18 months or something.
Imagine being the person who found a piece of work.
Several people have, Cindy Milbrath has one in her house. A bunch of people who are collectors of, yeah. There was a guy who was, my friend Aaron is like famous, and he has this guy who like collects his work, who came to the valley and just like was climbing trees to pull pieces of the boards of the barn out. A whole bunch of them are in somebody's warehouse in Madison, Wisconsin. And then there's like random people who have like a piece of the barn in their house. That's Cindy Milbrath has such in her kitchens. Like, I mean, you can still sort of get a sense of the scale of it when you see one board of it and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. That was, it was awesome. And
Where do people go online to see it?
good question. I think I still have like a little video about it on my Instagram. The crazy thing was Atlantic Valley also made a documentary about making of the project, which may have also been basically canned when the barn washed away, because then it's like, what do you have? You have nothing with the documentary, you don't have the product. So I don't know if that actually exists anywhere, but I mean, there's pictures of it on my Facebook page somewhere. But yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool.
Malena, thank you so much for being here, and thank you all.